All right, so clearly I'm talking too much because I got cut off in my 15-minute time limit. So let's make this real quick. So if we're looking at the non-renewable, we said it's easiest because it's already established, so we depend on these non-renewable resources. And it is so easy to because we've made everything for 100 years to depend on them. So it's way easier to keep doing what we've been doing than it is to change and to make a new system and to make new habits. Disadvantages, we should know there's a combustion of fossil fuels leads to additional greenhouse gases. It can lead to acid rain, and it can lead to other toxins within the environment as well. If we keep on going, there's just a few more little things I want to bring up. So I'm going to bring up the area of political instability as some major concerns. So the Middle Eastern countries, some of them are oil-rich countries. So they export a lot of oil. They depend on those countries for their wealth, so they can gain revenue by trading and exporting oil. And that being the case, if a country depends on the Middle Eastern country for oil, then you need to make sure that you're politically in a good situation with them. And the U.S. has depended on the Middle Eastern countries extensively for these non-renewable energy sources, and at times has then been politically tied and involved in things that maybe it shouldn't have been, or it wouldn't have been had they not been dependent on that energy source. So then I'm going to talk briefly about this. So there are non-renewable energy sources in the forms of oil and natural gas that are trapped within rock. So this is shale oil. Um, there's so deep within the earth in shale, so shale is a sedimentary rock, there is trapped oil and even natural gases. So one of the things that started happening within the past, oh boy, let's see, 5 to 10 years, is some areas have increased a practice called hydraulic fracturing, which is they dig deep wells within into the surface of the earth. So they dig straight on down into this rock, and then they pump lots and lots and lots and lots of water down there. They kind of the water gets into the pores within the rock, and they then pump it out. And within that process, they're pumping out not just the water, but along with the natural gas or oil that has been trapped within the rock as well. So that way they're able to continue to collect these non-renewable energy sources, these fossil fuels, and sell them and produce them in certain areas where maybe they wouldn't be able to. And it's become a very common practice in Colorado where I used to live. And in fact, one of the concerns is that people strongly believe that this hydraulic fracturing, because they're digging so deep within the earth and creating these fractures or breaks within the rock that didn't previously exist, that there's an increase in small earthquakes in areas where there had not been small earthquakes before. That is not 100% founded, so we do not have enough evidence to back that up, but it is a very, very interesting idea. So I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate. There needs to be more studies of the hydraulic fracturing and its impacts in order to determine if hydraulic fracturing can actually cause earthquakes. But it's very, very interesting. Its potential impacts are really interesting as well. So the rest I'm just going to have you read through on your own. So there's just a lot of information here. The one thing that I do want you to understand are just some of the pros and cons to the different types of energy resources. So there's always trade-offs. That's the issue in environmental systems and societies. Okay, there's always trade-offs. So with every type of energy, there's pros and there's cons, and we just have to try and balance those in order to make a situation that's going to be the most sustainable for society and the environment. So we've got to consider all these different factors. Additionally, if you have a minute, I mean, as you're going through looking at pros and cons, I think it would be really, really cool to go look up the stuff about the Tesla roof, because that's amazing, amazing technology. They just started marketing it last year, I believe. I'm not sure what the price is on it, but it's really, really, really a cool idea, as well as to look up some of the information about hydraulic fracturing. So it was really controversial when they brought hydraulic fracturing to certain areas of the United States over the past 5 years, but it seems as though the focus has shifted elsewhere. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I agree with a hydraulic fracturing or not. So it's something that maybe you could look at and think about, pros and cons as well. So just balancing those interests. I'm pausing here on the nuclear power because we did talk about this, and we talked about nuclear power as being more environmentally friendly, but also having some potentially hazardous impacts depending on, well, really depending on if something goes wrong. Because if nothing goes wrong, nuclear power, though it does produce some very, very dangerous waste, is overall quite environmentally friendly, even though it doesn't really classify as non-renewable because we do produce waste through uranium. So if we are looking at this, weigh the pros and cons and really think about it because countries that depend on nuclear power, depending on, I think primarily on luck and a few other factors, they can produce a lot of energy and be fairly environmentally friendly. So it's a really interesting thing to consider as a possibility. So going through that, you can read through the pros and cons, but things to look at. Um, Again, just balancing the sustainability factors when we're looking at, you know, the economy, society, and the environment, because that's the idea of this class. And usually, when you encounter questions on the IB exam, they expect you to consider multiple perspectives and those pros and cons or those advantages and disadvantages. So think about those things. And we will see each other a little bit later in the week, right? Bye.